My job is constantly interacting with and evolving and working with people and to make sure that the job is in line with the things that allow them to be amazing and still grow in that capacity.
Welcome to the first official episode of the Leading to Fulfillment podcast, where everything we talk about is meant to encourage people-first leaders, empower individuals to achieve fulfillment, and to help your organizations become places people love to work. I'm your host, James Laws, and I'm excited that you've taken a chance and honestly the time to check out this show. To catch everyone up who might be wondering what the Leading to Fulfillment podcast is all about beyond my little intro, I encourage you to pause this episode and listen to our 5-minute episode 0. That episode acts like the entire podcast manifesto. It does a great job of introducing me and the tensions that we'll be discussing week after week here on the show. Some final administrative issues. If you are watching this on YouTube instead of simply listening in your favorite podcast app, I am aware that my personal video quality during the interview was very poor. I was trying to do something different. It failed. There were no do-overs. Future episode quality will only get better, but I do apologize for everyone who's enduring this on YouTube. One final note before we get to our guest for this episode. If you haven't yet, I invite you to subscribe to the Leading to Fulfillment podcast, or better yet, head on over to circles.com. That's circles with 2 I's, and subscribe to our newsletter. There, we'll let you know every time a new episode becomes available, and we'll send you original and curated content on leadership, managing teams, and finding fulfillment. Now, let's get on to the good stuff. My guest for this episode is Chris Lema. Chris is currently the general manager for LearnDash, which is a subsidiary of Liquid Web, an internet hosting company. He's built and exited his own businesses. He coaches leaders and entrepreneurs through his blog, one-on-one calls, and various events that he runs throughout the year. My personal favorite of those events is an annual business conference he runs called Cabo Press. In my conversation with Chris, we discussed the unnecessary cost of success, defining success and fulfillment for yourself, while also demonstrating that to your team, hiring the right people, creating the right role, and unleashing them as they make decisions within the organization, and so much more. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Chris Lema. So Chris, thank you so much for joining me on the first inaugural episode of Leading to Fulfillment. I appreciate it.
It can only go up from here.
It's true. It's true. You know, it's funny. I told you this before the show, but as I was preparing for this, because this is a different kind of show for me, you had recently written an article about kind of like being okay to suck at things that you start and you've not done before, because anything that's worth doing is going to take time to develop the skills. So this is my episode where I brought in a ringer to make me suck less. So
That's right.
I'm gonna lean on you, and I'm just gonna let you like run with it, and I'm gonna learn from it, and I'm gonna apply that to everyone I talk to after this.
All good. All good.
Actually, you just recently, by the way, happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
You just had a birthday, and you wrote an article talking about celebrating what's important. And this whole podcast, the whole reason I started this podcast was to talk about leadership and how leadership impacts our teams and how we find, achieve, and help others achieve fulfillment professionally as well as personally. And that blog post was really you kind of sharing your eye-opening moment of like, what is fulfillment, what is important to you. And I wanted to know if you could just unpack a little bit of that, what's behind that blog post.
Sure. So what happened was, as a young man and a young entrepreneur, I was excited to build and sell my own company, right, and all the millions that would come from it. And so I gave up hanging out with friends. I gave up going on vacations. I gave up everything. And so for 2 or 3 years, I had built one company. I'd been part of the building of a company, and we'd sold it, but it hadn't been mine. So I had just gotten a little bit of change for that. But I decided then at about 27 and a half, almost 28, that I wanted to build my own business and sell it before I was 30. And I did. I sold it before I was 30. We sold it for about 10 or $11 million. My part was $3.5 million on paper, which is important to note. That money didn't go into an account. Um, it was stock in the company that had bought us, and so I had this, $3.5 million sitting in an account. It was locked up for 3 years, so I had to stay with the company for 3 years, and I woke up on my 30th birthday, and nothing magical happened, right? So I wasn't in any kind of magazine for 30 under 30. I There was no Mickey wasn't asking me, what are you going to do now? There was no parade, there was no confetti from the sky. There was really nothing. Uh and I and I thought, that money isn't even mine. It's paper money. I didn't spend it, though the company offered me loans against that value, and I didn't take it. And thankfully, I didn't, because as we raised more and more money, that money shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And by the time I left the business, less than 3 years later, um, it was worth about $30,000. Uh, and I'm glad I didn't borrow money against it. I'm glad I didn't spend it ahead of time. But even if it had been larger amounts of money, but it was locked up, right? You realize I just gave up a whole bunch of my life, and then for what? Like, what was the upside? And to be clear, when I sold that business and I joined the next one, I like almost tripled my salary. So it wasn't like I was hurting for money. Like, I had way more money than I ever had, and I bought a car. Like, it what like a lot of people think, okay, I want to sell. I want to have all this money. I want to have three. I want to have a million or 2 million or 3 million. Um, you realize it's the first 50,000 that actually change your life, right? Like, if you want to go buy a car and you're like, I've never been able to buy a car, 50,000. Maybe you buy a house or put a large down payment. Maybe it's 100,000. It's not millions, right? Often, what we're looking for is a lot smaller than what we think we're looking for. But the reality was, I had made a trade off, and I really am thankful that I caught the lesson at 30 rather than at 50, um, that it wasn't going to satisfy, that money wasn't the name of the game. And so I learned that at 30 and went, okay, if I now know what I care most about and what fulfills me, then it's always going to be uh, experiences, memories, building that in through relationships, investing in people. And the workplace is one of my favorite places to do that. I get to hire people and pay them money to enjoy spending time with them, right? And I mean, if you're going to spend a third of your life doing something, you might as well do it with people you really, authentically, genuinely like. Which is why I tell people, when we're doing the hiring process, I really have to like them, right? Because I'm not looking to just hire human resources, right? I am hiring people that I spend life on life time with. And, today I spent a bunch of time with a guy named Jack in LearnDash. I spent a bunch of time with a guy named Brian uh, inside of Nexus and Liquid Web, and I love my time with them, right? This is the relationship. So I caught that early, and thankfully I didn't spend the next 20, 21 now years uh, chasing after something I hoped would net me a lot of money.
And I love that because I'm probably one of those people who, one, I would never really fully chased it, but as I started to find some level of success, I started to think that way. Like, ooh, how do I acquire more? How do I get more things? How do I raise my standard of living and all of those things? And somewhere along the line, I luckily broke from that before it got out of hand. But so to learn that early is important because you get to take that for the longevity of your life and enjoy it. What I wonder is, so you discovered what fulfillment meant for you as an individual. How do you, as a leader, apply that and impart that to the people that you're bringing on, to the people that you're hiring? Yes, you're working with people that you love, and you're trying to hire people who are, talented and gifted people who care about the work they do. But how do you impart that lesson that you've learned into your team, and how do you demonstrate that and maybe even mirror that to your team so that they can maybe learn that lesson earlier, maybe even than you did?
So I think one of the dynamics is that when you work with people, and there are different models of working with people. I have um, for a very long time I have recommended a daily huddle, right? A connection point with your team that you lead on a daily basis, and so that gives me an ability to have influence and to engage and to connect with people over and over and over. It also gives you the ability to be witnessed or to be seen when you're making decisions. We make decisions, or I try and make decisions out loud, right? So we talk through and are more transparent. So the other day, uh, someone made a mistake, right? They sent an email to 40,000 people instead of 4,000 people. Now, and it was a deal with a discount, right? So that's a mistake that could have significant cost and revenue potential. And what you expect is that you're going to get on that next morning huddle and it's going to be a firestorm. People are going to be upset. There's going to be yelling. There's going to be, and you start the call by saying, guys, we all make mistakes. And this is not going to be our only mistake. And we're going to make many more mistakes. So what I want is for us to navigate these mistakes with calmness. If you get tense, you're going to make more mistakes. So let's just be clear. And let's also be honest with our customers, right? If someone calls up and says, I want this discount, and you go, I'm sorry, that discount was really meant for someone else. And we were trying to do something good. So our heart was in the right place. And here's where we're drawing a line. And you get to live life out loud in a team. And that gets to demonstrate your values, your approach, your frameworks, your paradigms, your decision making. You live that out loud and you do it not once and not even once a week. You do it every day. And I think that's the most effective way that you pass down everything from when I go on vacation at work, when I take a week off, Slack comes off my phone. My email account for the business comes off my phone. Um, my calendar comes off my phone. Like my phone literally has my personal info on it, nothing else. I don't know what meetings are happening. There's nobody hitting me up on Slack. And I do that not just because I want a week off. I do that because I want every person on the team to realize that the way I take time off is the way I want them to take time off. And when they're gone, I'm not going to call them in the middle of the week and say, hey, where is this one file? Oh, interrupt your vacation for this one thing. Like they learn, oh, a break is really a break. And I go, yep. And if we have to delay something for a week, we'll delay it. And if we have to make a decision without you, we'll make a decision, right? And life goes on. You should be able to take your break. So in the end, I think what happens is by having that daily touch point and by choosing to live out loud, to explain what's going on in your head, I think you get the best shot at demonstrating, um, you know, what you value and how you work. I wrote a couple books on how I lead, and one of my prospective employees bought the books, read them all, and then showed up on her first day. And we're in the middle of doing something a week or two later, and I start telling the story, and she goes, "Oh, I know this story." And she goes back and forth, and I'm like, "How would she know that story, right?" And then she says, "I know it because you wrote about it." And I said, "I did. I wrote about it in my book." She goes, "I read both your books. You read both of my leadership books?" Yes. Uh-oh. Right? Like, am I living up to my own words? And she goes, "Perfectly. Like everything you said in the books and how you work is how we do our meetings, how we work, how you lead, how you I loved I just felt like your books were a cheat sheet to how to work best with you." And so now when I go somewhere and I'm bringing on new people, I'm like, "Hey, by the way, here's a couple books you may," because we all have a standard we want to live by. It just so happens I publish mine. But we want to live authentically and consistently so that people can then receive those values, receive those norms, receive all that and go, "No, that's real. He didn't just stick that in a book. He lives that out and I want to live it out too."
I think that's awesome. What I love about that is how miserably I fail at it sometimes because I was doing the same thing. I've been writing for the past year over on our website, and one of the articles I was writing was how to help your team take better vacations, and it was kind of my my answer a little bit to all of this talk around the great resignation is like, you need to help your team recharge and find vacations. And then I realized I don't take good vacations. Like, I'm terrible at it. I work all the time. I check in. I'm always communicating. If they need me, they know where I am. They know I'm going to check in and see everything. And I'm terrible at it. So as I'm writing this article, I'm writing these points, and each time I would write a point, I'd go, okay, I need to demonstrate this. So I went and took a week off immediately with the first point. And then the second week, I said, when I got to the second point, I remember writing a note to the team. I said, hey, I'm going to be off this week. I am not going to be available if there is an emergency, because I run the company. I am the person in charge, but I've trained the team to be able to do everything they need to do. But I said, just in case, for my own peace of mind, I said, this number is really not for you, but I gave him my phone number. I said, if you do need me, I'm not going to be in the system. Call me, but only call me if it's an emergency. They're not going to call me. They know what they're doing, but it gave me peace of mind. It helped me disconnect so that I could say, okay, I know they know how to get a hold of me. So gave me permission to unplug. But it was just that very thing, is that I had to learn how to do it and demonstrate it for the team. And now I have to tell them, hold me accountable, make sure I'm taking vacations and I'm doing the thing I'm asking you to do.
Yeah. I have a friend of mine who told me that one of his employees, one of his leaders, when he takes his vacation, sends out an email to everyone saying, I'm on vacation. If you need me, send an email to, and he crafted this special email, and it's interrupt Jack's vacation at gmail.com. And you're like, yeah, okay, no, I'm not writing an email to that. Right. I'm
It
not.
adds a little weight, doesn't it?
It
It adds just
does.
a little bit of weight. Like,
It just,
you really know what you're
right.
doing.
You're like, is this really that level of emergency? Because I'm like, that was really good. That's a good idea. I like that.
That is brilliant. It definitely sets the tone of, this is what you are doing. Is it this level of importance that you're
Yeah.
reaching out for?
And what I
And
what I tell my folks all the time is, hey, when I'm on vacation, just make a decision. Just make a decision. Make your
yeah,
best decision. And when we come back, one of two things that happen. I will look at you and I'll say, that was a great call. Or I will say, here's some new things to think about the next time you make
yeah,
that call. But
absolutely.
either way, no one's getting in trouble, right? Because you got to learn to make a decision when no one's around, and just you
Yeah.
make your best call, right? And then if you make a call and you miss certain data, then I go, here's some things you should also look at next time, and that's it. There's no recrimination, no anger, just learning how to do it better.
Absolutely. And really, when you think about it, fundamentally, it's the leader's responsibility to make sure the team understands the mission, the objectives, the values that we live in and we make decisions by well enough so that when they're not there, every team member can make decisions based on those same objectives, those same values, that same mission. And yeah, will they get it all the time? We operate the same way. It's make the decision. If it was wrong, we'll figure it out and we'll solve the problem. We'll work from it. But there's probably nothing that anyone's going to do that's going to tank us, right? It's not going to bring us down. These are not the
Yep.
types of decisions that are happening in 1 week. Like, those things take a lot of time, and it's a downward spiral. So yeah, I agree. It's this idea of, like, listen, just make that decision.
And I think at the heart of this, what you just said is so critical. When I'm hiring someone, I'm hiring their values, their experience, their mission orientation. I am hiring for just about everything but skill. Like, skill is the last part of the equation. And skill, if it's there, is fantastic. But I just hired someone, and I put them in I did all the interviewing, and then I put them in two more interviews with other people. And when those other people came back, they said, well, um, she doesn't have this. And the other one said, she doesn't have this. Like, they were quick to find the things that she didn't know. And I said, right. Yep. I agree. And they're like, you're still okay. I'm like, oh, I'm 100% okay. Right. Because that is a completely transferable, learnable skill. That is some information, a little bit of knowledge, and and some practice. Right. Now, if she didn't know these other things, man, we'd be in trouble. Right. But this, and so we tend to want to hire the most perfect skilled person, even if from a personality, from a mission objective, those things don't fit, and I'm not interested in that, right? Um, I want the native building blocks to be already there at the lowest level, right? Where you go, okay, someone has a value for the mission that we're chasing after. Someone has a value for the people that we're serving, right? Someone has a value for the product that we use and are pitching. Someone is educationally oriented. They want to teach and train what they know to other people. They're not stingy. They're generous with their knowledge. These are the building blocks. If they don't happen to know exactly what this checkbox does or what this tab means, they can learn that, right? And when you hire those people and then you go on vacation, right? You know that the core building blocks are there to make the best decisions possible. But when you hire someone who may be like a super knowledgeable person, but fundamentally thinks that all your customers are stupid,
Yeah,
the
right.
decision they the decision they make when you're on vacation is likely not the one you want made, right? Because the
Absolutely.
perspective the perspective is off.
I love that. So, I've heard you talk a lot about, you know, hiring the right person first, which is this is a part of that, right?
Yep.
Hiring that right person first. I'd love to hear you maybe unpack that a little bit more, talk a little bit more about your thoughts on that because I think that feels when you talk about fulfillment, right? And finding fulfillment in a team in your organization, a lot of that is about finding the right person for your team because they may, you can find lots of great people and they may be the right person for somebody else's team, but that doesn't mean they're the right person for your team. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know you've written about it recently and you've talked about it before.
So I hired a partner marketing manager. All right. This is several years ago. I hired a partner marketing manager. Now here's the thing. In the software world, there's a lot of partner marketing managers. So you can imagine if I was trying to get the Facebook partner marketing manager or the uh, Amazon partner marketing manager, Twitter partner marketing manager, you can imagine how much I'd have to pay and also how hard I'd have to negotiate to say, please come to a hosting company, right? Like that wasn't going to win me any prizes. I wasn't going to get the top person who and by the way, if I had gone to Facebook and asked for that partner marketing manager, they're going to be like, yes, and I need $400,000 a year. And I'm like, I don't have that budget, right? So the core of the question, right, is how do you hire for the right role, even if you're going to hire a person that nobody else is looking at, or a person that has the skills but doesn't have the experience, or has the experience but doesn't have the context? Like, how do you find the diamond in the rough? So I hired I it was I was looking for this role at the same time I get an email from my friend Corey Miller's wife, Lindsay Miller. And she says, I'm thinking about going back into work and here's what I'm looking at doing. And I go, don't look at that job. You'll hate that job. Uh, you should actually look up the role of a partner marketing manager. You'd be really great at that. And she's like, what? I don't even know what that is. I'm like, well, look it up. I'm on vacation with my family. I'll write you in 2 days. And so I waited 2 days. I come back to my email because I was on vacation, and she goes, you're right. I read it. That sounds like me. Now, what had Lindsay Miller done in the past? She was a fundraiser, and she was a fundraiser for a politician, right? So let's think about that job, right? You go to a lot of events, you connect a lot of different people, you interact with a lot of strangers, you're there kind of marketing a product which happens to be your candidate, and you're clear to make an ask, right? I need a check. Here's how, right? You have all the skills needed for a partner marketing manager. You have them demonstrated in spades, but nobody's going and looking at fundraisers in politics to hire partner marketing managers for software companies. They just don't do it because they're like, no, no, no. I want you to, I want you to do this. I want I want you to have all this experience at Twitter or at Facebook. And I'm like, no, no, no. I distilled what are the skills that I need, and then I look in places and I look for people that have that baseline. So when I said to Lindsay, you'd be fantastic at this job, and she was like, I don't know if I will. And I said, okay, let me map it out for you. And I did. And then she was like, oh, I can totally do that. I'm like, yeah, my product is your politician. And these members of this community are your donors. And the ask is to test out this product and potentially become an affiliate for it. And you just map it. And then she was like, oh, I can do this all day long, which she did. Right. Um, and so in the end, right, my job in hiring is to find the right people, right? Find the people that have the innate experience and demonstrated skill, and eagerness, and like the community they're going to serve, right? So she had been involved in the WordPress community as a married to Corey, and you have a desire to do something, that allows you to leverage your skills. And then you go, yeah, she doesn't know this hosting product, she doesn't know this. Who cares? She'll pick that up in 10 seconds. It's a cheat sheet, right? Rather than hiring someone who has 20 years of hosting experience and hates all the people that they interact with, right?
Yeah.
um,
No,
so
that's really it's really cool. And in a post that you wrote about this, you talk about how you look for known players, people, people like
yep.
the people that you look for when you're hiring. They know someone in the organization. They know you as the leader. They are connected to the product in some way. They're connected to your customers in some way, which makes them, I fundamentally think, like, in an organization, in order for people to find fulfillment anyway, they need to be connected to something within the organization, whether that be leadership, other team members, the customers, the mission, the values of the organization. They have to have a connection to something. And it seems to me that when you're recruiting, that's one of the very things you're looking for, is where are the connections that already exist to the organization, and how do I capitalize on that. But the next thing you talk a little bit about that I absolutely love, and I don't know that I've done a great job at it, but I'm trying to learn, because I think about this idea as a small business owner. We're told that we are job creators. But that doesn't mean that we hire people. It means that we actually design and create and fashion roles for people to fill. And you make a statement that you shape the job to the person, which strategically that sounds challenging to me, because I'm thinking like, oh, I need a social media manager, and we know strategically that's what we need. But I find this right person and they're not a social media manager, so I'm just going to make a different role for them, and it's not going to fulfill the strategic need. Can you talk a little bit about that, and how you go think about shaping the job to the person?
So absolutely, I think, if we're going to talk about having employees love their job, then the job has to be something that is designed so that they can shine and live out their strengths. Everybody has 10, maybe 15% of the job they don't like, right? You have data entry, or you have meetings, or you have some part of your business you don't like, but you've never met a salesperson who doesn't like the pitch, right? You've never met a biz dev person who doesn't like negotiating. You've never met a product person who doesn't like designing a new product. Like, the 80 to 90% of our job is stuff we love. And then we all know that there's a tax that, yeah, I got to go do a report for my boss, or I got to do an expense report, or I got to do something that I don't love. And it is what it is. The problem is sometimes we craft jobs, right? We define the job and all the roles based on what someone somewhere else decided was this is the definition of the job. And then we start grabbing people that we think are talented and we want, and we put them in the job with the hope, right, that it'll all work out. But in the end, we find out that we've crafted a role that presents more than 10% tax on that person. It's tiny little microaggressions, it's tiny little friction points, but they add up, right? And so if 40-50% of your job is friction, you'll start seeing people underperform. And they're not underperforming because they can't do the job. They're underperforming because their job is hostile to them. And it's just in the definition of the job. So what I tend to do, in the same way that we design onboarding flows or we design new products, is find the friction and eliminate the friction. So what you're doing is you're going, okay, I think this person, meets most of the core of what I want to have happen. And I think this job is most of what I'm trying to fulfill to hit another objective, a corporate objective. So I have an objective, then I create a job for the objective, then I have a person for the job. And in that process, I look for, okay, where's the friction? Where's the stuff that is not going to be helpful to them? And I peel it off. And if there's enough value in the job with the person without that friction part, such that they're going to grow it, drive revenue, drive the objective and goal, it's worth doing all the time. And so I hired, at one point I hired 2 product managers and their jobs were completely different. And one of them was like, hey, how come that person's not doing what I'm doing? And the other one was like, hey, how come that person's getting paid the same and they don't do what I do? And I go, hey, just to be clear, you're both product managers, so you're both getting the same pay, but also your skills align you towards these activities. Your passions and desires align you to these activities. You're both happy, right? So what's with the comparison thing, right? That's on you. You need to stop looking at other people. I crafted a job that makes you look brilliant, that makes you look good, that makes you happy to do your job. And by the
That's
way,
great.
if I gave you that job of that other person, you would hate your life, right? And they're like, yeah, you're right, I would. I'm like,
I don't want to do that at all.
yeah,
No, that's really awesome to hear you kind of lay that out, and even to think about jobs being hostile, or like hostile to the person that you've put in the position. And my guess is, from as a leader, that's not a one and done situation, that you're constantly through one-on-ones, you're revisiting and talking about, like, is this still working? Are you still in your superpower? Are there
yeah,
things that have come up? Because let's
yeah,
be honest, as a job progresses, things get tacked on that we never meant for them to be tacked on, and you have to
yep,
scrape them off and keep doing that process over and over again. People
yep,
change, organizations change.
yep. Yeah, you
That's
have to do
awesome.
that. And I'll be honest, when we talk about the great resignation and people leaving, I think at the core of it, people are leaving because they are unfulfilled. People are leaving because their superpower somewhere at some point in the job got put on a shelf. And now they're doing 60% of stuff that anybody could do. And here's the thing, when I get complimented for something that anybody can do, that compliment doesn't stick. When I get complimented for doing something that I know I do well and that I know and they know that no one else could do, that compliment sticks. But if most of my day to day interactions, even if someone's praising me, right? If most of my interactions are like, a monkey could have done this job, this is a stupid job, right? I'm going to start looking around. And the worst part is, there's a whole lot of people that already quit their job without quitting their job. They're still getting paid by you and they've already quit. I mean, that's way worse, right? At least when they quit, you stop paying. But the people who've quit inside and they're still collecting the check, right? That's on you. So my job is constantly interacting with and involving and working with people and to make sure that the job is in line with the things that allow them to be amazing and still grow in that capacity. And if they're not doing that, then I can presume they're going to start looking, because they're going to want to be in a place where their skill set is maximized, not where their skill set is put on a shelf and they're doing something that anybody can do.
That's amazing. And I would say to anyone listening, any leader of teams listening, that is something to really think about. That the idea is that people quit your organization, and if they don't, like, quit leave, they quit stay, that's painful. And that you're losing a lot of throughput, you're losing a lot of energy, you're making other team members miserable, because other team members are going to feel that and resent it. Nobody wins in that situation. So you better be about finding their superpower and helping them achieve that kind of professional fulfillment in any way possible. Chris, thank you so much for spending time with me and talking through all of this. For everyone listening, Chris, you coach people on all kinds of topics like memberships and product and leadership and teams and driving teams. If somebody wants to get a hold of you and reach out and hire you for coaching, how do they do that?
ChrisLema.com. That's where the blog is, and there's a place for inquiry on coaching, and everything else is all there. So ChrisLema.com. I'm also at Chris Lema on Twitter.
There you go. Also, if you want to read more about Chris's insights, he also has another website that he occasionally posts to called leaders.blog. Please check it out. There's a wealth of information over there that you can check out, and I hope you will take the time to consume all of that. Chris, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks once again to Chris Lema for taking the time to be on the show. And thank you to all of you for taking the time to listen to the very first episode of Leading to Fulfillment. I hope you really enjoyed it. As Chris said at the beginning of the show, it can only go up from here. And if so, I think we're going to have a pretty decent podcast. Everything about this episode, including the resources mentioned and transcripts, are available to you over on the website. And to make it easy, you can access it by visiting leadingtofulfillment.com/001 for the first episode. As we wrap up the show, and after listening to some of Chris's thoughts, what were some of your takeaways? Be sure to let us know in the comments on the episode over at our website. One that stood out to me is that we have to be careful not to accidentally create a role or a position that might not be ideal, but even worse, hostile to the individual. The truth is, most of us wouldn't do that intentionally, but how easy is it to do that accidentally? Well, one of the ways you prevent that is by regularly checking in with your team and asking questions about how they're feeling about the work they do each day. I know it sounds obvious, but those kinds of conversations are far too uncommon in today's work culture. We've got goals and objectives to achieve. We've got fires to put out. And because of this, sometimes we lose touch with the human elements of our business. If you desire to be a true job creator, create jobs your people love and are empowered by. Your team and your bottom line will thank you for it. See you at the next episode of Leading to Fulfillment.